Hello everyone, and welcome back to some more G-Senjou no Maou with me, Phantom Zawai. So, we are now, well, we've basically cornered Hashimoto, along with Yuki and Usami, along with Director Shiratori, and now we have Miss Noriko out there with us because she has been given away as a hostage. So, yeah, things are moving along. Shiratori is still hostage, but we're making progress. So let's get to it. It's been 3 hours since the whole affair started. Despite having direct orders from one of their superiors, the Sonoyama men are on their last nerves. They can't handle the lethargy much longer, smoking the time away as they sit on the grass. I watched as a taxi driver eyed the school suspiciously for a moment, then drove away. Apparently Hashimoto's ransom has arrived.
Hashimoto-kun, omatase.
Tokita immediately resumed the negotiations.
スーツケースに500万入っているわ。
スーツケース？それはまたかさばるものに入れてくれよかったね。
If he's inconvenienced by the bag being conspicuous, then he really must be planning on making a run for it.
まあいい。ならそれをこっちに持ってきてもらおうか。
分かったわ。また私が持っていけばいいのよね。
ああ。他の連中は信用ならんからな。
じゃあ、その時に水葉も解放してもらえる？
Hashimoto laughed deeply.
慌てるなよ、トキタ。
どうしたの？私とあなたの仲じゃない。
そうだな。金をきっちり用意したんだから、俺もお前の役に立ちたいとは思う。
As I thought.
車を用意してもらおうか。本望の値にでも頼め。できるだろう。
それは聞いてみないとわからないわ。
A car? I guess I could probably get a company car from the Azai Corporation offices.
いいか、車は絶対に用意しろ。ここは譲歩できん。起きたもわかるだろう。お前が犯人だったらどうだ？
ええ、全く妥当ね。逃げられる算段が整っているのならね。
But as long as he's in the city, he won't be able to escape from the Sonoyama group.
わかったな。まずはケースを持ってこい。車の到着を確認したら、こっちからまた連絡する。
The call ended, and Tokita shrugged her shoulders.
というわけだけれど、京介くん、
Alright, I'll prepare a car.
やけに早い決断ね。
He has no idea about the extent to which my father controls the city. Even if he manages to get away in a car, we'll nab him soon enough. It's no different than the situation with Saijou.
分かったわ。私も今からお金を届けに行くわ。
Alright, don't do anything rash like attack Hashimoto or something.
水葉に何かあったら、さすがにわからないよ。
Tokita smiled as she walked once more towards the darkness of the school, suitcase in hand.
おぶつめってやつか。
Eiichi muttered as he huddled with Miss Noriko.
椿の時もそうだったけど、凶悪犯罪って結構あるもんなんだな。
Yeah. I casually looked over at Usami. Things have been bizarrely chaotic recently, ever since she moved here. 30 minutes later, Hashimoto's getaway car arrived. A few Sonoyama cars were also on standby, just off the campus. How were things on the inside, Tokita?
二人で仲良く差し入れのドリンクを飲んだようね。いい兆候とは言えるわ。
Did Hashimoto say anything to you?
速やかに出ていくよう言われたわ。
Well, everything is set now. All that remains is to wait for Hashimoto's call.
浅井さん、学園の方位は完璧でしょうか？
What do you mean?
いえ、この学園は外の塀が低いので、校舎から出られると、あとはどうとでも逃げられるのではないかと。
We're covering the first floor windows, the main entrance, the staff entrance, and any possible exit to the building has been practically sealed. Isn't that good enough?
ならいいんですわね。皆さんもお疲れのようですし、ちょっと不安になりました。
And what about you? You must be tired too. Hashimoto made it pretty clear that he intends to march right out, get in the car, and drive off.
あ、そうでしたね。何を言ってるんすかね、自分は。
She scratched her head in embarrassment. What about you, Tokita? How are you holding up? I mean, you of all... Excuse me. My voice is giving out real quick today. You of all people must be tired as hell.
嬉しいわね。じゃあ肩でも揉んでちょうだい。
You've got enough energy to crack jokes, so I'm sure you'll be fine. Still, she's a little quiet. She must be worn out from the long negotiations. She'll be able to rest soon, though. The upcoming chase scene will be left to my expertise.
京介君って特定の女の子いるの？
What's this about? Tokita laughs.
これもストックホルモンでかしらね。長い間チームを組んでたものだからあなたとも妙な連帯感を覚えているの。
I know what you mean, but I'll pass.
そう残念ね。
That kind of joke is unlike Tokita.
浅井さんには自分がいますもんね。
Kill yourself.
あらあらあうんの呼吸とはこのことね。
Tokita smirked with her arms crossed.
それにしても連絡がないですね。
Yeah, he should be able to see the car from up there. Heck, yeah. Heck, he should even be able to hear it. Hush, 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 hush.
もう少し待ってみましょう。何かあったのか。
If we get antsy and jump the gun, it might tick him off.
でも待つにしても限度があるでしょ。
Alright, we'll wait 10 more minutes. Yet, 10 minutes later, there still had been no contact from Hashimoto.
繋がらないわ。
Tokita called calling twice, but in vain.
どうします？
This is upsetting. What happened? Tokita, what's your take on the situation?
正直予測がつかないわ。
Did he suddenly change his mind?
それはないと断言したいわね。これまでの交渉過程で私は私の持てる力を全て出し切ったわ。
Then why isn't he calling us? We've met each other, met each and every one of his demands. Tokita pierced me with her stern eyes. Oh, I'm sorry. There's no way you'd know that. But the question remains, what do we do now?
様子を見に行くしかないでしょうね。
Yeah, I think that's the best option. Which of us will go, though?
俺が行こうか。
An unlikely volunteer raised his unexpected hand.
なんつうか、さすがに俺も一発くらい橋本をぶん殴ってやらねえと気が済まねえっつうか。
No one's going to knock him a good one, Eiichi. Shiratori's life is on the line here.
でもさ。
Then Tokita stepped in.
いいわ。私と栄一君で行きましょう。
ユキが？
I guess it would be justified to send someone who's on good terms with Hashimoto, seeing as how you'd be less likely to agitate him.
京介君はここで全体の指揮があるでしょう。
Sure.
ハリは京介君を補佐してあげて。今までずっとそうだったんでしょ。
まあ。
Tell me about it. I keep getting caught up in Usami's trouble for some reason.
ええ。何かあったら助けてちょうだい。
僕が守ってあげるよ。
心強いわね。
I'm sure. Tokita must have realized that Eiichi's presence may cause Hashimoto to drop his guard. Eiichi's reputation of idiocy must have preceded him after all. In any case, he'll be less threatening to Hashimoto than Usami or me.
それじゃあ行くわよ。栄一君。
Looking somewhat nervous, the two disappeared into the school building. What happened up there?
最悪の場合、水葉がもう殺されているかもしれません。
I thought of that too. They could have gotten into a scuffle and killed each other. It'd certainly explain his missing phone call at least.
ユキはそれを覚悟の上で校舎に入っていったんでしょうね。
She's brave, that friend of yours.
かっこいいんですよ。本当にかっこよすぎるくらいです。
And immediately after Usami finished her sentence, the phone rang with a clamor. Of course, it wasn't Tokita's phone. It was mine. What's What's going on? What's wrong, Tokita?
信じられないわ。
Tokita's typically calm voice was shaking. What happened?
落ち着いて聞いて。
Alright.
いないのよ。
What? Tokita steadied her breathing, settled herself, and said,
水葉も橋本くんもいない。
That's not Then Tokita yelled,
あるのよ。二人とも忽然と消えてしまったのよ。
After hearing Tokita's report, Usami and I headed straight for the lab storage room.
落ち着きましょう、浅井さん。
I know.
人が消えるなんてありえません。
Yeah. Tokita just panicked out of worry for her sister. We ran down the corridor and threw open the door to the lab equipment storage room. And it truly was empty.
取りに来てごめんなさい。
Don't be. It came as a shock to me as well.
仕事の野郎、どこ行ったんだ。
Eiichi paces up and down the room, unable to keep his cool. I give the room a quick search. The plastic bottle Hashimoto supposedly drank from, and a single paper cup lay on top of the desk. The flashlight Hashimoto apparently used lay alongside them.
浅井さん、床に手錠が。
The black handcuffs that robbed Mizuha of her freedom were lying plain as day across the linoleum floor.
手錠を外してというこ
Tokita bit her lip in regret. Did her despair get the better of her? She couldn't bring herself to say those next few words. Mean what, Tokita?
と。時間稼ぎだったのよ。
Tokita seemed to reinforce her failing spirit.
車を用意させて、さも正面から逃げるように油断させておいて、こっそりどこかから逃げたんじゃ。
That's ridiculous. He's still in the building. I shouted. The Sonoyama men outside heeded my call. I need to have them perform a thorough search of the school. The exits were completely sealed. There's no way he could have made it beyond these halls. Or walls, rather.
本当か？どこか穴があったんじゃないか？
An escape route?
例えば、秘密の出入り口とかよ。
This isn't the time for A chill suddenly dashed up my spine. Wait. My face must be twisted beyond belief right now. Now that I think about it, wasn't this school being expanded? Of course. That was the spark that kindled this whole fiasco. Are the renovations done yet?
でもほとんど終わってるって。
What have they been working on?
まだ立ち入り禁止だからよく知らないけど、1階に新しく通路ができてるとこ。
That hallway has windows, doesn't it? Eiichi nodded. Damn it! I'm so sorry. This was entirely my fault.
知らなくて当然です。
そうね。学園の関係者か。水葉なら、あるいは知っていたかもしれないけど。
Hashimoto must have asked Shiratori about the secret exit. Well, all we can do is give chase now. I reach for the door. Leave the rest to me. Go home, everyone. He got away on foot sometime around 30 minutes ago. If we comb through the area closely, we should be able to catch him.
あ、俺も行く。
I left Eiichi behind as his fleet footsteps echoed through the dark corridor. Bearing an anguished expression, Tokita Yuki searched the darkness just beyond the window of the lab equipment storage room.
やられたわ、ハル。
She sighs to the girl behind her. Haru responds with a sigh of her own.
残念な結果になったね。
私がまずかったのよ。
水葉の手錠が外されていたこと。
そうよ。それが何を意味するか分かっ。
Haru's intellect shined through in her immediate response.
水葉が橋本さんに協力したということになる。そうでなければ手錠をかけた人質を連れて逃げるわけがない。
足手まといになるものね。
どうしてそんなことに。
Yuki shook her head.
ストックホルム症候群よ。
なるほど。
ストックホルミングはプラスの面が多いから、普通はネゴシエーターもそれを助長させるように働きかけるの。
でも今回は違った。
言い訳をするようだけれど、普通はこんな短時間で ストックホルム症候群なんて発生しないわ。過去の事例を見ても100時間とか半年とか、そういった長い時間をかけられるのが通例なの。
通例は通例だったと？
水葉も父親の理事長を快く思っていなかったわ。つまり同じ事情を抱える橋本君に同調しやすいと言える。
The girl standing behind her had no consolation for Yuki.
人の心にマニュアルなんて当てはまらないってことね。
Yuki sighed once more.
まだまだ訓練が必要だわ。
The very next instant, Haru's voice pierces her back.
いや、ここまでは全て計算づくだったはずだ。
Yuki's body freezes.
そうだろう、ユキ。
That's right, Haru. Yuki mocks somewhere within herself. That mockery quickly showed itself on her visage. If only you weren't here. Oh shit, right? I hear my lovely child is having a bit of fun tonight. I wonder how that's going. Well, while I found her plan to be quite the humorous parlor trick, I seriously doubt it will work on Usami. Accomplices can really foul things up. Should I have given her that advice? It shouldn't matter. Children grow whether or not the parents are there to help them along. Oh, he has his own voice for once.
どうしたの、ハル。
Yuki directed a faint smile at the girl behind her.
まるで私が真犯人みたいな言い方じゃない？
事実、真犯人だ。
Haru pronounced sternly.
最初から全てユキが仕組んでいたことだ。
どうしたの、ハル。私たちは親友でしょ。
Yuki put on innocent airs, but her heart knew better. No sleight of hand could blind Haru to her best friend's strange behavior.
ハル、落ち着いてよ。橋本君は水葉を連れて拡張工事のあった廊下の窓から逃げたんじゃないの？
違う。
じゃあどうやってこの部屋から消えたっていうの？
普通に1階のどこからでも逃げられたと思う。
それはおかしいでしょ。
だから取り囲む前に逃げたんだ。
Ah, I gotcha. Yuki all but resigned. Nevertheless, she wanted to amuse herself with the conversation.
橋本さんは職員室に忍び込み、のりこ先生を襲った。そこに駆けつけた我々を校舎の外に出すと、のりこ先生を理科準備室の隣の薬品室に閉じ込めた。
私が学園に到着する前の出来事ね。続けて。
その後橋本さんは理科準備室に立てこもるわけでもなく、さっさと逃げてしまう。
ちょっと待ってよ。橋本君はここにいなかったっていうの？
そうだ。さも私たちを見下ろしながら交渉をしているように見せかけて、実際は別の場所で電話を受けていた。
別の場所ね。
Yuki shrugged in false surprise.
じゃあこの部屋で懐中電灯がちらついていたのはどういうこと？
懐中電灯は橋本さんが学園を出る前にこの部屋に残していったんだ。
でもあなたも見たわよね。ライトが明滅してたじゃない？
いろいろ方法はあると思うが、最も簡単なのはあらかじめ残量の極端に少ない電池を入れておくことだ。
Correct.
初めはこの部屋のカーテンが閉まっていなかったから不自然だとは思ったんだ。
カーテンね。
普通立てこもりをするならカーテンは閉めるだろう。外から室内の様子を探られるかもしれないし。
そうね。ちょっと不自然ね。
Haru continued in a deep voice.
ユキが到着してカーテンの閉まっていない窓に向かって手を振っただろう。
ええ。反応が鈍かったわね。
鈍いはずだ。窓の向こうに橋本さんはいないんだもの。
That was a failure on Yuki's part. If only Haru hadn't suggested that she wave at the window.
どうしても私と橋本君が共犯ってことにしたいみたいだけれど。
残念だけど。
のりこ先生はどうなの？あなたは記録係だからちゃんと覚えているでしょ？うん。隣の部屋から橋本くんの怒鳴り声がしたと。はい。じゃあそれはどう説明するの？
Haru didn't falter.
かけてもいい。今ユキのポケットに小型の IC レコーダーがとにかく録音した声を発することのできる機器がある。
Yuki found this amusing. Haru called it spot on. She did indeed have a IC recorder with Hashimoto's voice samples saved on it. He had left it here before taking his leave.
でもそんな録音した声くらいで隣に人がいるって先生に錯覚させられるかしら？
だから解放された先生にユキはあまり質問をしなかった。
Goodness gracious, Haru is so incredibly fun. She thrust everything that Yuki had recognized as suspicious into her face.
あれはおかしかった。中の様子を知る唯一の人物をなぜ聞き上手のユキが放っておいたのか。
たまたまよ。疲れていたのかも。
録音した声は一言二言なんだろう。それなら恐怖に震える先生を騙すこともできそうだ。
Yuki felt like throwing in the towel.
わかったわ。それで身体検査を始めようっていうの？
別にやらなくてもまだ証拠はある。
ぜひ聞きたいわ。
この紙コップだ。
差し入れた紙コップ？それがどうしたの？
ペットボトルの中身はなくなっていて紙コップも少しふやけている。
橋本くんがドリンクを紙コップに注いで水葉が飲んだってことにならない？
でも口をつけた跡がない。
Very good, Haru.
ドリンクはすべて流しに捨てたんだろう。
That's why Yuki chose the lab equipment storage room.
これはユキと橋本さんが共犯でなければ成り立たない手口だ。そうでなければドリンクを差し入れしたりケースを届けに行ったユキが中の様子を偽る意味もわからない。
Yuki decided that it was time to surrender.
さすがね。
Haru's gaze assaulted Yuki's senses.
認めるんだな。
やっぱりあなたを記録係にしたのが間違いだった。
だからチームでやろうって言った時渋っていたんだな。
Yuki nodded to the girl behind her. That moment saw her defeat decided.
お約束だから聞くけど最初に怪しいと思ったのは？
ユキ！
教えてよ。怖い声出さないで。
Haru answered, heavy with sadness.
バスケットボールの話をしていた時
やっぱりね。
橋本さんがこう言ったんだ。ほらあのアイスアリーナを見ろよって。
あの時は背筋が凍ったわ。
そこの窓からアイスアリーナなんて見えないはずなんだ。
Yuki had been standing near that window in order to stymie Haru from that realization, but it had been in vain. At first glance, it may seem like Hashimoto was Yuki's downfall. However, Yuki had some responsibility in this failure as well. He was originally a simple young man, someone whose extremes merely amounted to chalk on blackboards. Petty was perhaps the most fitting word. To make such a person out to be a calm, motivated hostage taker with a goal was quite difficult. When he showed his true colors by asking about her sex life, she felt the pressing desire to hit him.
今水葉はアイスアリーナの見える場所にいるんだな。
そう、橋本くんと一緒にね。あらかじめ私が睡眠薬を飲ませて運んだのよ。
なんてことを。
だってあれだけくだらない父親にまだ義理立てしてるのよ。信じられる？どこまで人がいいのかしら。
本当は水葉も犯行に誘う予定だったの。
残念なことに交渉決裂よ。ある有名なネゴシエーターも家族だけは説得できないって言ってたのね。
After declaring so, Yuki turned around and returned Haru's sharpened glare.
ユキ、お金はまだこの部屋にあるんだろ。
それを返したら全部許してもらえるのかしら。
Haru let silence speak for her. Her pained expression wounded Yuki's heart. Nevertheless, Yuki calmly continued.
許さないわよね。あなたは正義の勇者様だもの。
Haru shook her head.
動機はやっぱり理事長への復讐か。
大したことじゃないでしょ。不正に受け取ったお金なのよ。
不正に受け取ったお金を不正に泥棒していいのか。
警察もついに理事長を逮捕できなかったのよ。だったら誰が悪を懲らしめてあげられるの。
私はそれがユキでないことを願っていた。
甘いわね、ハル。善人はバカを見る時代なのよ。
私は時代に生きているわけじゃない。私はあくまで私の考えに基づいて生きている。
The words of Maou, the mouth of the hero, from the mouth of the hero, such as to be expected.
そこをどいてよ、ハル。
Yuki jerked her chin to sign Haru away from the door.
どこへ逃げようというんだ。
そうね。京介君を敵に回したらこの町では暮らせそうにないわね。
ユキ、聞いてよ。
Haru said as she placed herself in Yuki's path, arms wide open.
聡明なユキのことだからやむを得ない事情があったのだと思う。でもユキは間違ってる。
ありがとう、ハル。いろんな人に迷惑をかけたことは心苦しく思っているわ。特にのりこ先生には本当に悪いことをした。京介君たちは今頃必死になって犯人を追っているでしょう。
だったら
Yuki interrupted Haru's protest.
もう遅いわ。私はとっくに悪魔に魂を売ったのだから。
Maou. Haru's eyes gorged in despair. In that same instant, Yuki shoved her with both hands. Haru shrieks. She staggers and loses her balance. Her feet slip and her hair glides through the air. Leaving Haru where she lay on the floor, Yuki dashes out of the corridor, immediately swerving around to close the door of the lab equipment storage room. She jams the key into the lock and twists it violently. It's all or nothing. The door creaks. Haru beats at the door, shouting, cursing her own powerlessness. Luckily, the key had broken off in the lock, jamming it.
逃げるな。今ならまだやり直せる。
Yuki flashes the everyday smile of her past just self.
交渉においてどうなったら負けよ。
That's right. Yuki was now past the point of no return. Without so much as a backward glance, Yuki dashed into the deep darkness of the school corridor. Haru's grieving voice would forever linger in her ears. So, how about that? This whole ordeal, Yuki was behind it. After receiving a call from Usami, I head for the lab storage room one more time.
どうもご迷惑をおかけしまして。
Usami briefed me on the situation. Tokita had apparently masterminded this operation and has now escaped somewhere. Though betrayed by her best friend, Usami managed to stay composed.
ユキを追いましょう。
Yeah,
あの状況で逃げるということはユキにはまだやり残したことがあるということです。
Usami's face tenses again.
水葉も心配です。
It's already 2 a.m. The director has gone home for now to rethink the situation, and Eiichi ended up deciding to escort Miss Noriko home. That leaves no one but Usami and I, and a handful of bored Yakuza. Alright, let's pull out all the stops and track down Tokita. A tall, beautiful girl walking around in a uniform at this hour shouldn't be too hard for the Soniyama guys.
すみませんね、いつも。
You should be. If I keep using men for matters that are none of the Soniyama group's business, they'll have me cutting off fingers in apology before too long. Usami laughed feebly.
関係なくもないと思うんですよ。
Pardon?
この上んなやり口、人をもてあそぶような犯罪、誰かの入れ知恵とは思いませんか？
Oh please, not Maou again.
私の考えすぎですかね。そうですよね。ユキが魔王と繋がってただなんてそんなはずないですよね。
I couldn't say anything.
ユキのお父さんは時田明宏さんと言いまして、そりゃ立派な方なんですよ。警察の警視正っていうものすごく偉い人なんですよ。だからユキもそんなお父さんの恩をあだで返すような真似はしないはずなんです。そうです。そりゃ白鳥理事長には恨みもあるでしょう。でも脅迫して復讐するなんておかしいじゃないですか。ユキは時田警視正の下で立派に育ったんです。今のお父さんでよかったと自慢げに言っていたこともあります。
Usami seemed unable to hold back her frantic emotions.
こんなネクラなことしなくてもいいじゃないですか。なんでまたこんな。ユキならもっと考えて、そうもっとうまく理事長を見返してやれるはずなんです。
Her voice gradually fell out and as she trembled, and her hands began to shake.
おかしいですよ。あれはユキじゃない。
Usami is looking for a source of evil. She simply can't accept the fact that the Tokita she knew could undergo such a metamorphosis without some dark catalyst. Then again, the belief in evil is sometimes one's only hope of salvation. Usami. Was it on a whim that I rested my hands on Usami's shoulders? She didn't shake me off. Instead, she silently accepted my kindness. Though she's usually so annoying, so downright disgusting, the Usami I lent my support to seemed small enough to fit in my hand. After a brief intermission, time continued its course. The night wore on as the frigid, unforgiving wind beat endlessly against the window. Stealing through the streets and alleys bathed by neon lights, Tokita Yuki brainstormed for a new countermeasure. If everything had gone according to plan, she'd be heading for the cheap apartment where Hashimoto and Mizaha awaited her, a large amount of money in hand. Yet, will her bad luck ever cease? She's near the apartment, but Hashimoto isn't answering her calls. Was there some accident? In any case, entering the apartment would have been dangerous. Yuki slipped into the darkness, sidling up against the walls of nearby buildings. Her school uniform was simply too conspicuous. Should I rely on the Maou? Now that Yuki understood how easy it was to incite the wrath of one of the city's most powerful organizations, she began to realize the true extent of the meticulous nature she had once sensed in Maou. The man has been able to avoid the omnipresent threat of the Soniyama group for months now, despite moving freely about the city. Surely that means Maou would be able to guarantee her safety. Only, I'm not the Mao's henchman. Maou had merely advised her a bit concerning the plan. He'd also supplied the drugs to ensure Mizaha slept through her transportation to the apartment. Now that she objectively evaluates the situation, she may indeed have been possessed by the devil. It all began 2 years ago, with a single email. The sender identified himself as not the Maou, but Maou. He had quite thoroughly investigated Yuki for no more than a common stalker. He knew that she was an illegitimate child, and that her mother had passed away. Maou, who had put forth an investigation into her past that would spark envy in even the best private detective, had begun to entice Yuki. After a few electronic exchanges, Yuki left her hometown, alone for Tomen Betsu City, running to meet this most intriguing Maou. The club was deep in the depths of Central Boulevard. After introducing herself at the entrance, she was ushered into a VIP room. It bore the look of a high rollers lounge in an upscale casino. No light poured through from the ceiling. Her only option in the dim room was to rely on the indirect light at her feet. Nevertheless, the most defining point was the mask on each and every one of the employees' and guests' faces. Among them were narrow eye masks, the kind you would expect to be worn by sexual deviants, often accompanied by decadent ordnance satin hoods. Some of the group even sported a long pair of red horns, along with the likeness of other such horrors only imaginable in medieval European paintings.
はじめまして、時田ユキ。 私が魔王だ。わざわざ田舎から飛行機で来てもらってすまなかったな。
This Mao was no exception. He wore a white masquerade mask, reminiscent of the Phantom of the Opera. Yuki tried to ignore the oddity and bowed in greeting.
お招きありがとう。随分と素敵な場所ね。
気に入ってもらえたかな。ここではどんな地位の人間も子供になって遊ぶことができる。
The coquettish voices of both women and men echoed from the dark corners of the room. They were accompanied by the sounds of alcohol sliding down throats, of shouts demanding service from nearby women. The guests endlessly entertained themselves with such vulgar acts.
それで私に何の用？つまらない用事だったら警察に駆け込ませてもらうけれど。
A deep laugh split from behind the
あ
mask.
ちらにいらっしゃる御人がわかるか。
Mao gestured with his chin, and Yuki's eyes followed. A plump, middle-aged man sat there, slumped on the sofa, wearing nothing but an oversized diaper on the lower half of his body. Standing beside him was a woman in an apron, shaking a toy at him as if soothing her upset infant. The scene's inhuman, bizarre-natured caused Yuki to reflexively avert her
あ
eyes.
ちらは警視庁の去る天井人だ。夜は素敵なプレイに興じられているようだが、朝になれば正義の警察官として私のような犯罪者を追い詰める。面白いだろう。
Yuki calmed her breath in an attempt to regain her composure. Despite her efforts, the otherworldly aura of the room gated any sense of order within her. Mao had not even laid a finger on the mountain of money before him.
警察や暴力団への根回しなしでこんな店が日本で営業できるはずがないだろう。お父上に恥をかかせるような真似はよすんだ。
よく知っているわね。私の父が警察官だって。
まあ、だからこそお前に声をかけた。
Yuki finally regained her composure and attempted to scrutinize the Mao's gestures and tone of voice. Her possible routes to reading this man were limited as long as his face was hidden from her.
聞けば、時田は長年犯罪心理学を勉強しているとか。
探偵でも雇ったのかしら？
Mao nodded. Something like that.
保護観察所に演者を装って何度も通ったそうじゃないか。なかなか楽しい子供だったようだな。
ありがとう。おかげで変な目で見られたけれど、今では友達もたくさんできたわ。
With a slight smile, Yuki examined Mao. He'd recrossed his legs twice since she entered the room. His hands fidgeted in tune with the conversation, opening and shutting as he made his comments. He was an archetypical diplomatic type. That was the conclusion of Yuki's evaluation. People who fall under this category make judgments through the use of logic and reason. Yuki engraves each and every one of his fingers' subtle motions, their expressions, into her memory. He seems to be quite the careful man. Whether that care was manifested as a result of prudence or paranoia was yet to be seen.
いろんな犯罪者と会ってどう思った？
どうもこうもみんないい人ばかりだったわ。私とよく遊んでくれたもの。
彼らも寂しかったんだろう。娘ができた気持ちだったのでは？
そうね。
Yuki made sure to keep the conversation going without letting her guard slip. Mao had kept command of the conversation from the beginning. The man before her, without saying a word about himself, had been trying to invade Yuki's heart.
ところで、あなたはどうして魔王なの？
悪の権下として分かりやすくていいだろう。そういう時だわ。なぜカタカナでユキという名前なんだ？
He's good. He smoothly evades the question and follows up with a question of his own. Judging by his mastery over the conversation, he was likely a businessman of some kind.
名前の由来は私も知らないわ。お役所に届けるときにうっかりしちゃったんじゃない？
Yuki decided to switch strategies. It was futile to barrage the diplomatic businessman with questions. This type likes to talk. One should build trust with these people by honestly answering their questions the questions they pose. Only after this trust has been solidified will they begin to speak about themselves. Maou recrossed his legs again.
かわいそうだな。子供は自分の名前を選ぶことができない。実の父を恨んだことは？
それは何度も。
母の葬儀にも来なかったそうじゃないか。
ええ。あの夜はどうやって思い知らせてやろうかと、それだけを考えていた。
それを今実行に移そうとは思わないか？
Yuki laughed as if she understood.
クロージングをかけるには早すぎると思わない？
Maou laughed along.
これは失礼。時田に復讐を実行させることが私の目的ではないのだが、そう聞こえたのなら。
He spread open his arms as if to embrace his own joke, and then recrossed his legs. Yuki pondered this gesture as she smiled with the Maou. She came to the realization that he recrosses his legs just before redirecting the conversation. Does this reaction mean something? Recrossing one's legs is often used as a way of relieving tension. In short, it could mean that he's lying.
じゃあ本当の目的をそろそろ教えてもらえる？
時田と遊びたかった。それじゃダメか？
こんな場所で遊ぶ趣味はないわ。
わかった。本当のことを言おう。目の前に何がある？
お金ね。何億あるのかしら。
実はあることをしてもらいたいんだ。報酬は弾む。
聞くだけ聞いてみましょう。
簡単なことだ。
Maou said as he recrossed his legs.
銀行口座を一つ作ってほしい。そしていずこかから振り込まれた金を私に渡してくれ。受け渡しはこの部屋だ。
Yuki rejected the request with strength and confidence.
嘘はやめて。
Maou seemed to be at a loss for words.
銀行口座？なぜ私なの？あなたは私の家庭環境から能力まで細かく調べて、結局はそんな誰にでもできるような仕事を任せようっていうの？
何事も信頼関係というものがある。まずは小さな仕事からお願いしたいと思っても不思議はないだろう。
いいえ、あなたは嘘をついているわ。
She stared at Mao's legs with a sharp look. One of his long, fidgety legs was about to be placed on the other. Maou nodded and said, utterly composed.
面白いな。
Mao's hands and legs stopped moving. A question, asked almost in humor, escaped his lips.
そうやって人の心を探らねば不安か？
As he spoke, he put his fingertips together and sank deeply into the sofa. Yuki, astonished, felt a panic rise inside of her. Mao's entire persona had just changed from a moment ago. Putting one's fingertips together denotes a feeling of grandeur and dignity. The man before her was aware of this fact, and was consciously acting in that manner.
ちょこまかと手足を動かしていたのはわざとよ。
どうかな？
Now he had resorted to playing with the fringe which jutted from the side of his mask. That would typically be read as a sign of anxiety or lack of confidence, but there was no conceivable reason for Maou to be anxious.
何なのよ。
An irritated tone slipped from her tongue. Maou seemed to perceive that as an opening, and quickly leaned forward, close enough to violate Yuki's personal space. Just as she realized she had gotten in over her head, Mao's powerful voice pressed her.
私の仲間になれ。時とユキ。
The end of his sentence struck home.
そうすれば、その類まれな好奇心を満たしてやろう。ごまかすな時田。罪を感じているのだろう。
Even his mask seemed to smirk.
現に、お前がこれまで会ってきた犯罪者は模範囚の善人ばかりではないか。
だったら何なの？
Yuki felt that she would have been overwhelmed by his force if she had not at least feigned defiance.
そうよ。私が見てきたのは 刑期も半ばで仮出所してきた人たちがほとんど。根がいい人なのは当たり前。でもそれが何？
The powerful feelings Yuki hailed leaked into words. The pressure in that long quarantine zone of her heart squeezed them out into open air. Of course, there was something wrong. It was a sin to treat people who had been repenting for so long, and who had been forgiven by society, the society they offended, as mere objects of study or curiosity. However, the torment Yuki felt because of her guilt had always been washed away by the whisperings of her inner demons. She was only a child, after all. Not to mention her complicated background, which had destroyed her ability to trust other human beings. The opening in her heart was not lost on the king of these demons, Maou.
何も悪くない。何も悪くはないが、もったいないとは思う。
もったいない。
世の中にはもっとおかしな人間がいる。欲望に歯止めの効かなくなった真の凶悪犯や、嘘を真実と信じたまま話すことができる社会病質者。目的のためなら手段を選ばぬテロリスト。
Yuki's heart began to race against her will.
時田はいずれ父に倣って警察官を志すのだろう。ネゴシエーターの必要性は近年になって日本でもようやく認められてきた。お前はその卵だ。今から実地訓練をしておいて損はなかろう。
つまり何なの？
The more Yuki spoke, the less she was able to contain herself.
あなたのお仲間になれば、今まで私が見たこともないような変人を紹介してくれるっていうの？
The mask nodded deeply.
いくらでも。
そんな嘘でしょ。
嘘かどうか確かめたくはないか。
Yuki hesitated once more. As she sat speechless, Maou said,
これからここである外国人と会うことになっているのだが、一緒にどうだ？
外国人？
ああ、鼻毛を切らない習慣があるが気のいい男だ。
でも犯罪者なのでしょ？
ただの商人さ。
あなたは犯罪者って名乗ったわよね。犯罪の密談を警察官の娘が黙って見過ごすと思う？
そう構えるな。酒を酌み交わすだけだ。そしてこの金の一部を渡す。
皇帝でも買ったの？
余裕が出てきたな。乗り気になってきたと思っていいのかな。
Maou sank into the sofa again. Yuki's heart began to sound the alarm. Her curiosity became unmanageable and began to claw at the walls of its quarantine.
お前は何も知らなくていい。
Maou kindly said,
私が何者でどんな商売をしていて何を企んでいるのか、犯罪につながるようなことを一切知らずにただ貴重な体験ができる。
However, associating with Maou would nonetheless be approving of crime. That is a line that she must not cross.
どうかな。悪い話ではないと思うが。
Yuki was perplexed. Or rather, she was feigning perplexion.
訪問販売なんかでは玄関のドアを開けさせたらもう勝ったも同然らしいわね。
押し売りをする気はないがな。
Her fate may have been decided as soon as she met Maou. From the very onset, she had been successfully coerced into deceiving her father by coming here without telling him. She hadn't actually lied, but she had certainly been less than forthcoming. It's no wonder that she'll continue to do so.
それで魔王？
She couldn't go on without asking the most critical question.
親切に私の好奇心を満たしてくれるのはいいけれど、見返りに何を求めてるの？私の父に関わるようなことだったらお断りよ。
She mustn't cause her father trouble. This Maou is a criminal. As such, he may desire to blackmail or somehow manipulate her father, a powerful figure in the police system. Yuki steeled her courage as she gazed into the evil mask's eyes. And Maou, from the other side of the mask, responded in the slow manner of a parrot speaking to an infant.
特に見返りを求めているわけではないが、 強いて言えば
Mao put his hands to the mask.
魂かな。
His tone held no hint of cajolery. The contract was signed. Now that he had shown his true face, there would be no escape from this Mao. After that day, about once a month, Yuki would secretly meet with Mao. He typically introduced her to his acquaintances in Tomenbetsu City. But oddly enough, his meetings also often took her to the coast of the Sea of Japan, Fukui, and a small village in Niigata. Yuki was able to meet a great many people during these rendezvous. Chinchins who ruled the Moscow black market, extremist Muslim jihadists. Mao often received briefcases from fishermen at the wharf, but he never explained what they hailed. Yuki never intended to ask. Most of the Japanese people she met were youngsters. They were each the child of a politician, or the owner of a large corporation, or some other powerful person. And they were each children who, for some reason or another, had become unable to live their lives without running away from something. Each and every one of them carried a sickness in their heart. To Yuki, these meetings were exceptional in a way. Speaking to a criminally minded child outside the bounds of a youth detention center is a rare opportunity. Yuki had the opportunity to meet an abundance of strange, abnormal people. She pitied them, sympathized with them again, apparently, and grew from her experience. It didn't take long until she herself lost the ability to control her desire, the desire to sate her endless curiosity. However, the Mao she had met with so many times now remained a complete mystery. His vast wealth and questionable connections reflected the title Mao perfectly, but Yuki had never once seen the man commit a crime. That said, she wasn't about to let her guard down around him.
まさか春が追っていた人間こそが魔物だったなんて。
Even at the school they attended together in her hometown, Yuki knew that Haru was searching for someone with some objective in mind. But no matter how close they grew, Haru would never tell Yuki about the Mao. She'd only found out a few days ago when she interrogated a man who seemed to be one of Mao's pawns, Saijo. Yuki knew Mao's contact details, though he likely had many more, and had met with him in person several times. Should she tell Haru about these things? Yuki hesitated on this for a time. As she hesitated, Mao planted the seeds of the plan for the night's hostage situation. In the beginning, Yuki had no intentions of harming others in her quest for vengeance against the director. She hadn't intended on revealing Hashimoto's identity or dragging Miss Noriko into the fray. Her original plan was to persuade Misaha to join her, fake a hostage crisis, and make the director squirm a little. Why did it have to turn out like this? The answer lied in Yuki's own weakness. She didn't have the courage to tell her father, a police officer, that she was involved with a man who had triggered the car bombing in the Southern District. She didn't have the courage to tell Haru, either, for fear of being hated. Besides, her weakness was responsible for her desire for vengeance in the first place. What would Yuki gain by threatening and stealing from the director?
気が済むではないか。
Mao said these words. Is it really alright to bottle up your feelings? He spurred her on.
理事長という最も制裁を受けるべき相手を放置したまま優秀な警察官になれるとでも
Excuse me. Of course, she had said her words to the director. She had scolded him as much as she could for abandoning her mother and then having the audacity to simply skip her funeral. But the director merely gave her an empty apology.
なぜ理事長が反省しないのか。それは時田に力がないからだ。
The power Mao spoke of is one molded around a skeleton of violence.
あまりこういう大きな例えは好きではないが、この世界を見てみろ。軍事力の最も大きい国が最も大きな発言力を持っている。 力のない人間がどれだけ素晴らしいことを言ったところで、一部の美談好きの人間しか耳を貸さない。結局は凶弾に倒れたり、多数派の迫害を受けることになる。
Every great negotiator needs a great assault team behind him.
私は子供が大好きでな。時田のような優秀な子供が話せばわかる時代を作り上げてくれると信じているが、今はまだ早すぎる。まだまだ数と金と握り拳がものを言う。
Yuki submitted to the devil's temptation. Then again, who could be subjected to 2 years with the Maou and come out uncorrupted? Maou was always composed and captivating, but most of all, he possessed the power to capture the hearts of the young. And as a result, Yuki betrayed Haru, hurt Misaha, and is now being chased by the Yakuza. You reap what you sow. Oh man, Shiratori. A shadow stepped into the darkness.
あら、水葉。
Misaha stood there, astonished.
話は全部橋本くんから聞いたわ。へえ。
He seemed brutish enough to get the job done, but he must be soft on women.
私を縛ってたロープ緩んでたから隙をついて彼のナイフを奪ったの。すごいわね。そんな度胸があるなんて知らなかったわ。その勇気の一部でも京介くんに向けられたらよかったのにね。姉さん本当なの？何が？本当に姉さんが学園で事件を起こしたの？私の父を脅迫したの？本当よ。
Yuki answered point blank.
そうしないと気が済まなかったの。それで気は済んだ。
Yuki shook her head ambiguously.
何？その手。困ってるんでしょ？助けてくれるっていうの？うん。
Yuki smiled faintly, and as she looked into Misaha's eyes. They weren't the eyes of a liar.
自首する気はないんでしょ？
Of course not. If she had even considered it, she wouldn't have shoved Haru to the ground and run away. In fact, the biggest reason for not wanting to get the police involved from the very start was because she didn't want her father to learn of this.
まだやり残したことがあるからね。
The black flames in Yuki's heart ignited once again. She had left the suitcase with the money in the lab equipment storage room. Thus, even after all that effort and labor, Yuki had gained nothing. I need to show him once more.
まだ続けるのね。
Misaha's voice betrayed her attempts to hide her sadness from Yuki.
水葉、どうして私が今まであなたに会いに来なかったかわかる？
Of course she doesn't. There's no way she could. The only person who could understand her mother's sadness and suffering was Yuki.
なぜ私の方からあなたたちに会いに行かなければならないの？頭を下げるのはあなた方でしょ？まあ分かってるわ。水葉は悪くないもの。それでも水葉に会いに行くことは母さんを裏切るようで気が引けたの。私も姉さんに会いたかった。でもどこに住んでるのか知らなくて。分かってるわよ。分かってる。そうね。水葉は何も悪くないわ。
Misaha had merely been brought up in naive ignorance and harmony, unlike Yuki.
さあ、おしゃべりはここまでにしましょう。
As Yuki turned to walk once more into the darkness, Misaha called to her, her hand still outstretched.
姉さんは私を恨んでるの？まさか。
Yuki said as she donned her usual gentle smile.
あなたが大事な妹よ。
The negotiator lied. Supposedly, Tokita was spotted around here. Time continued to march on deeper into the night, as Usami and I continued our search along Central Boulevard.
先ほどちらりと聞こえましたが、ユキの他にもう一人いたとか。
Yeah, probably Hashimoto.
ということは、水葉は解放されたんでしょうか？
No, wait. They said it was a girl.
つまり
Meaning it was probably Shiratori, I guess. They must have run off together. Usami sighed.
おそらくユキはもう一度理事長を脅迫する気でしょう。
It's quite possible. She never did manage to get the money earlier.
自分は理事長のお宅にお伺いするとします。ユキから電話が入るでしょうから。
Alright. I'll keep looking for Tokita. We parted ways. Oh dang, and we're at an hour, so that is where I'm actually going to end today's episode. Hope you guys are enjoying it. Things have really heated up. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.